I'm going to speak quietly for a moment, because what I have to say isn't the kind of thing you shout. You've been carrying a lie. You didn't invent it. Somebody handed it to you a long time ago, and you took it because you were young and you trusted them. And you've been dragging it around ever since like a stone in your coat pocket. The lie goes something like this: there is something wrong with me. That's it. That's the whole thing. It doesn't announce itself. It just sits there, low and constant, underneath everything you do. And I want to take it apart tonight, piece by piece, until there's nothing left of it but the truth it was covering. My name is George. I've spent a long time sitting with people in their worst hours: hospital chairs, church parking lots, kitchen tables at 2 in the morning where the coffee went cold 3 hours ago. And I keep meeting the same person. Different faces. Same wound. Someone who has been told, in 100 small ways, that they are too much and not enough at the same time. If that's you, stay with me, because I'm not going to comfort you. I'm going to correct you. Let me start with something growing under a rock. There's a stone in my mother's backyard, flat and heavy, maybe the size of a car hood. It's been there since before I was born. Nothing grows on it. Nothing grows around it. Either the grass gives up about 6 inches out. For most of my life I looked at that stone and thought of it as dead ground. Then, one summer, my brother and I decided to move it. Took both of us, a crowbar, and most of an afternoon. And when we finally rolled it over, there was a root under there. A single root, thick as my wrist, pale as bone, because it had never seen light. It had grown sideways for years, 20, 30 feet, pushing under that stone in the dark, finding its way around the weight, refusing to die. We followed it. It came up on the other side of the fence, in the neighbor's yard, as a tree. Hold on to that. We're coming back to it. The first lie, that the way people react to you is a verdict on who you are. Here's what I need you to understand. People perceive things about you, constantly, things you have never said out loud and never will. They pick up on something in the room when you walk in, and they respond to it sometimes by pulling closer, more often by pulling away. And you have been reading their reaction as a report card. Somebody goes quiet around you and you think, I did something. Somebody stops calling and you think, they finally saw it. A group conversation shifts when you join it, and you feel the shift in your chest before your mind catches up. And you spend the drive home doing autopsies on your own personality. Stop. That reaction is real. Your interpretation of it is wrong. What people are perceiving about you is not a flaw. It's a frequency. And most people cannot hold a frequency they don't have language for. So they do the only thing available to them. They back up. Not because you're too much. Because you're unfamiliar. That difference is the whole rest of your life. Think about Jeremiah for a second. God tells him something that ought to have been the most comforting sentence in Scripture. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before the cells, before the heartbeat, before his mother knew she was carrying him, God had already named the assignment. And what's Jeremiah's response? He argues. He says he's too young. He says he doesn't know how to speak. Read that again. The man God knew before he existed spent his opening conversation with God trying to explain why he was the wrong choice. Sound like anybody you know? The second lie, that being perceived means being understood. These two things feel identical from the inside. They are not remotely the same. Somebody can perceive everything about you and understand none of it. They can feel the weight you carry and have absolutely no framework for what it is. They can sense that you see more than you say and interpret that as arrogance, or coldness, or judgment. They read the signal correctly and decode it completely wrong. And you've been apologizing for the signal. Let me name the signs. 9 of them. Not because 9 is a magic number, but because these are the ones I've watched people react to over and over, in room after room, for years. These are the things people perceive about you that you have never been able to explain, and here's the part that matters that cannot be shared. Not because you're hiding them. Because language doesn't reach. Sign 1. People go honest around you faster than they mean to. The cashier tells you about her mother's surgery. The guy changing your oil mentions his divorce. Somebody at a wedding you barely know corners you by the coat rack and tells you something they haven't told their spouse. You didn't ask. You never ask. And afterward, half of them get strange with you. They avoid your eyes the next time. Because you saw them. And being seen is terrifying to a person who has spent their whole life managing what people see. That's not a social skill you have. It's a doorway you are. You didn't build it. It was installed. Sign 2. Your presence changes the temperature of a room, and you get blamed for it either way. You walk into an argument and it deflates. You walk into a room where everyone's laughing, and something in the laughter goes self-conscious. You have watched both happen, and you have never once been able to predict which one you'll get. Here's what nobody tells you. You're not doing anything. You are simply not participating in the pretending. And pretending requires everyone in the room to agree to it. When one person stops, the whole structure wobbles. They feel the wobble. They blame you for the wobble. You go home and wonder what's wrong with you. Nothing is wrong with you. You're just not lying. And it shows. Sign 3. People trust you with things and resent you for holding them. This one takes years to see. Somebody unloads on you the real stuff, the stuff they're ashamed of, and for a season you're the closest person in their life. Then, slowly, they drift. And you never understand why, because nothing happened. Something did happen. You became the person who knows. And knowing is a debt that some people can't stand to owe. That's not rejection. That's their inability to be in the same room as their own truth. You just happen to be standing where they left it. I've had that happen to me more times than I can count. And it took me until my 40s to stop taking it personally. A man in my first congregation told me something one night in the church parking lot, engine running, headlights on, both of us standing in the cold because neither of us wanted to be the one to end it. Something he'd done years before. Something he had never told his wife and never intended to. For about 8 months after that, he was the first person there every Sunday. Then he started coming late. Then every other week. Then he found another church across town, and when I ran into him at a hardware store 2 years later, he was polite, in the way you're polite to a dentist. I never brought it up again. But I was the man who knew, and every time he looked at me, he had to look at the thing. You've got people like that in your history. You've been reviewing those friendships for years, trying to find the moment you ruined it. There is no such moment. You were simply the place they set something down, and they couldn't come back to the place without seeing the something. Sign 4. You carry other people's weather. You walk into your own house and know before anyone speaks that your spouse had a bad day. You sit in a pew and feel the grief 3 rows up. You get in the car after a family dinner and feel like you've been physically working, because you have. People notice this about you. They call you sensitive. They call you dramatic. Sometimes, if they love you, they call you a worrier and tell you to relax. Nobody calls it what it is. You were given a receiving instrument, and nobody ever taught you how to turn the volume down. Sign 5. There's a solitude on you that people mistake for sadness. You've been asked if you're okay when you were perfectly fine. You've been pulled aside at parties. Somebody has said you seem far away, and you didn't know how to explain that far away is where you live. And it isn't lonely. It's just quiet. They see the solitude and read it as a wound. It's not a wound. It's a room. And it was built for a reason we'll get to. I knew a woman, she'd been in the same congregation for 31 years, who used to come to the building on Tuesday afternoons. No service, no meeting. She'd let herself in with a key the previous pastor gave her, and sit in the 4th row on the left for about an hour, and then leave. People talked about it. Kindly, mostly. Somebody suggested she might be depressed. Somebody else thought she was grieving her husband, though he'd been gone 11 years by then. The women's group started inviting her to things. Gently, the way you invite somebody you've decided needs rescuing. I asked her about it once, just directly. "What are you doing in here on Tuesdays?" She said, "Listening." That was the entire answer. She wasn't sad. She wasn't lonely. She had 4 children, 9 grandchildren, a phone that rang constantly, and a standing Thursday card game. She was not starved for company. She just knew something most people never learn, that there are things God says only in rooms with nobody else in them. And if you never go into such a room, you will live your entire life without hearing them. And here's the part that stayed with me. Half that church thought she was struggling. She wasn't struggling. She was the reason a number of them were still standing, and not one of them ever found out. That's the solitude. That's what it actually is. And people will keep reading it wrong until the day you die. Sign 6. You've been told your whole life that you're too intense, and then people call you when it's serious. That's the contradiction, isn't it? The same intensity they mock on a Tuesday is the intensity they need on the night the hospital calls. They want you diluted for the everyday and concentrated for the emergency. And they never notice they're asking for 2 different people. You've noticed. You've noticed and said nothing for decades. Let me pause here, because this is where the root under the stone comes back. That root grew sideways because it had no other option. It couldn't go up. Up was granite, so it went where nobody was watching, in the dark, for years, and every inch of that growth looked like failure from above. If you'd stood on that stone and asked what was happening beneath your feet, the honest answer was, nothing. Nothing at all. And the whole time, a tree was being made. You have had seasons like that. Years where you produced nothing anyone could point to, where the prayer felt like talking into a coat closet, where you watched people with half your depth get twice your visibility, and you did the math 1,000 times and it never came out fair. That was the sideways growth. That was the part nobody applauds, and nobody can see. And I'm telling you as somebody who has watched this happen to people for a very long time. The ones with the deepest roots always had the heaviest stones. Sign 7. People position themselves relative to you without knowing they're doing it. Watch it sometime. Watch how a group arranges itself when you arrive. Somebody sits up straighter. Somebody gets louder. Somebody who was talking stops. You are not doing that. You have never once tried to do that. But there's an authority on you that people respond to before their conscious mind registers it. And their response is usually some version of adjusting. Some adjust toward you. Those become the people who stay. Most adjust away. And you've spent your life collecting those departures and stacking them into evidence about your own worth. Throw the stack out. It was never evidence. It was reaction. Sign 8. You know things ahead of schedule, and you've learned to keep your mouth shut about it. The relationship you saw ending a year before it ended. The friend you thought about at the exact hour they needed you. The decision you knew was wrong when everyone else was celebrating it, and you said nothing because the last time you said something you got laughed at. You've been right often enough that it scares you. You've been dismissed often enough that you don't mention it anymore. Here's what I'll say about that. The ability to see early is not a gift for showing off. It's a gift for standing in the gap. It's for intercession. It's for being the one person praying about the thing before anybody knows there's a thing. You weren't given foresight so you could be believed. You were given it so you could be positioned. Sign 9. Something in you has never fully belonged anywhere, and you've stopped expecting it to. Your family loves you and doesn't know you. Your church welcomes you and doesn't reach you. You have friends, good ones, and there's a floor beneath the friendship that none of them have ever stood on. You've moved. You've joined things. You've tried new circles. Told yourself this one will be different. And then felt the same old distance arrive around month 6, like a scheduled appointment. And you've concluded that the problem is you. I want to confront that directly, because it's the center of the lie and everything else is scaffolding around it. You have never fully belonged because you were not made to be absorbed. You were made to be sent. Those are different assignments, and they feel identical. When you're inside them, the loneliness is the same loneliness, but one of them is a defect, and the other is a design. Jeremiah never belonged either. He wept over a city that wouldn't listen to him. He was thrown down a well by the very people he was trying to save. He asked God to let him quit, not once, in one bad week, but as a recurring theme of his entire life. And the whole time, he was the one holding the word that would outlast the city. I want you to sit with what that life actually looked like, day to day, because we tend to read the prophets as if they were living inside a highlight reel. Jeremiah spoke for roughly 40 years. 40, and in all that time there is no record of a single person changing course because of him. Not one. He preached to kings who burned his words page by page as they were read aloud. He warned a nation that responded by putting him in a cistern to sink in the mud. When the city finally fell exactly as he'd said it, would nobody came to him and said you were right. They just scattered and dragged him along with them, and he kept speaking to people who were no longer listening. At what point in those 40 years would Jeremiah have felt successful? Never. There was no such moment available to him. He wasn't the audience's servant. He was the word's carrier. And carriers don't get to grade themselves on how the delivery was received. That's the reframe I need you to take. Every metric you've been using, did they understand? Did they stay? Did it land? Did anyone say thank you? Every single one of those is a metric for a job you were never given. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. That's not a compliment. That's a job description. God didn't say I liked you. He said I knew you, and then handed him a life that almost nobody would have chosen. I want to stop the teaching for a second and say something plainly. There are messages that pass through your eyes, and there are messages that pass through your spirit. If something in you recognized itself while watching, don't dismiss it. That is the Spirit confirming what was already written. The secret protocol carries 7 keys that unveil what heaven deposited in you before you ever arrived, things no one around you has ever been able to name. It comes with the full audiobook for your moments of prayer, silence, and encounter with God. And you also receive the Awakening Map, the guide that illuminates the 5 seasons of spiritual awakening, revealing with precision exactly where you are and what comes next. The link is pinned in the first comment, but only for a limited time. Don't let this moment pass without a response. Now let me finish taking the lie apart, because there's a piece of it left, and it's the sharpest piece. The lie says, if these things were real, someone would have confirmed them by now. That's the one that keeps people down. Not doubt about God. Doubt about themselves, dressed up as reasonableness. If I really carried something, wouldn't it have been noticed? Wouldn't somebody have said so? Let me answer that with the plainest thing I know. Confirmation from people is not how this works. It has never once been how this works. David was anointed king in a room with his father and brothers watching, and then he went back to the sheep. Went back. The oil is still in his hair, and he's out in the field with the animals. And every one of those brothers went on treating him like the kid who runs errands. When Goliath showed up, his oldest brother publicly accused him of showing off. He'd been anointed in front of them, and they still didn't see it. So no, nobody is going to confirm this for you. The people closest to you are usually the last ones capable of it, because they knew you before, and before is the only version of you their minds have room for. That's not cruelty on their part. That's just how proximity works. The tree in the neighbor's yard, nobody in that yard knew it started under our stone. They just saw a tree. And the people in my mother's yard, standing right on top of where it began, saw nothing at all. You may be the root. Someone else may be standing in the shade you eventually make. Neither of those people is going to knock on your door and explain the arrangement to you. The lie also says, if I could just explain it, someone would understand. I want to release you from that project. Set it down. I've watched people spend 20 years trying to translate themselves, trying to find the right words for the marriage, the mother, the friend group, rehearsing the conversation in the car, rewriting the text message 11 times, certain that if they could just find the correct sequence of sentences, the other person would finally get it. They won't. Not because they're cruel. Because some things don't survive translation. You cannot hand someone your interior life. You can describe it, and they'll receive a description, which is to a life what a photograph of a fire is to warmth. Accurate. Useless for what you needed it to do. These 9 signs cannot be shared. That's not a tragedy. And it's not a punishment. It's the nature of what you're carrying. Roots don't get to explain themselves to the grass. What you can do, and this is the turn, this is the thing I most want you to hear tonight, is stop requiring the explanation to happen before you're allowed to live. You have been waiting for permission that no human being is authorized to give. So what do you do with all this? 3 things. I'll be brief, because this isn't the part where you take notes. It's the part where something either lands or it doesn't. First, stop auditing yourself after every interaction. That habit, the drive-home autopsy, the replaying, the why did I say that is not humility. It's the lie doing maintenance on itself. Humility knows what it is and doesn't argue. What you've got is something else, and it's been eating your evenings for years. Second, find the 2 or 3 people who adjusted towards you instead of away, and pour into them. Not 5, not a community, 2 or 3. That's the historical ratio, and it's never been different. Jeremiah had a scribe. David had one friend, and that friend was the son of the man trying to kill him. Depth has always come in small numbers. Third, and this is the hard one, start treating the solitude as a room instead of a sentence. You've been trying to escape it. Fill it. Apologize for it. Go in it instead. Because the quiet you've been calling loneliness is the only place where you can actually hear. And everything that has ever come to you clearly came to you there. That room wasn't a punishment. It was built early, and it was built on purpose. And it's the only room in your life where the noise of other people's opinions doesn't reach. Let me tell you how the story of that stone ends. My mother sold that house 4 years ago. I went back the week before the closing, walked the yard one last time, and the stone was still sitting there. Nobody moved it after us. My brother and I had rolled it and then rolled it back, because that's what you do at 15 when you've satisfied your curiosity and the afternoon's getting long. But the tree on the other side of the fence had gotten enormous. Shade over half the neighbor's property. Somebody had built a swing set under it. There were kids in that yard, who had never once thought about where it came from, playing in shade that was made by a root that spent 30 years going sideways in the dark, under a rock nobody ever moved. That's the shape of it. That's what I've been circling this whole time. You are not going to get the recognition. Not the way you've imagined it. There's no ceremony where the people who misread you gather to say they were wrong. That day doesn't come. And if you're honest, waiting for it has cost you more years than the misreading did. But the shade comes. It always comes. Somebody sits down in something you built underground and never knows your name. And that right there is what it looks like when heaven uses a life. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Not before anyone appreciated you. Not before it made sense. Before you existed. Before there was a single person on this earth qualified to have an opinion about you. The assignment was already decided. Everything that has happened since is just people reacting to something that was settled before they got here. So here's what I want from you tonight, and I want it specific. Of the 9 signs, go back through them in your mind. One of them made your chest tighten. One of them was less like listening and more like being read. You know which number it was. Put that number in the comments. And then tell me one moment. Not a summary of your life. One moment. The day, the room, the person, the thing they said. The time somebody perceived that thing about you and got it completely wrong. And you went home and didn't tell anybody. Tell me now. I read them, and I pray over them. And there is something that breaks when a thing you've never said gets said out loud, even once. You've been under the stone a long time. You thought the dark was the verdict. It was the depth